Officer James Mitchell drummed his fingers on the steering wheel of his police cruiser, his eyes scanning the quiet streets of Boston as the autumn sun began to set. After 14 years on the force, night patrols had become as natural as breathing to him. The street lamps were just beginning to flicker to life, casting long shadows across the nearly empty roads. His radio crackled with routine updates, but nothing exciting had happened all day, just the usual parking violations and one minor fender bender. Mitchell was about to turn onto Maple Street when a sleek black Mercedes caught his eye. The car was moving slightly under the speed limit. Too carefully, almost suspiciously so, and its right taillight was out. Well, at least it's something, Mitchell muttered to himself, flicking on his cruiser's lights. The Mercedes continued for a moment before slowly pulling over to the curb, its turn signal blinking properly despite the broken taillight. Mitchell stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt as he approached the vehicle. His hand rested naturally near his weapon, a habit formed over years of experience. As he got closer, he noticed the driver moving around frantically inside the car. "Good evening, sir," Mitchell said, shining his flashlight through the driver's window. The beam revealed a man in an expensive suit, probably in his mid-40s, with perfectly combed gray hair and designer glasses. But something was off. Despite his polished appearance, sweat beaded on the man's forehead, and his hands shook slightly as they gripped the steering wheel. "Evening, officer," the man replied, his voice surprisingly steady despite his apparent nervousness. "Was I speeding?" "No, sir. Your right taillight is out. License and registration, please." The businessman reached for the glove compartment, then stopped suddenly. Mitchell noticed his eyes darting to a black briefcase on the passenger seat. It was a high-end leather piece, the kind that costs more than a week's salary. "Is everything all right, sir?" Mitchell asked, his police instincts buzzing. Years on the force had taught him to read people, and everything about this man screamed that something wasn't right. Yes, of course," the man said quickly, too quickly. He opened the glove compartment and fumbled with the papers inside. A business card fell out, and Mitchell caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar government seal before the man hastily snatched it up and stuffed it in his pocket. As the businessman handed over his license and registration, Mitchell noticed his hands were trembling more obviously now. The license belonged to a Robert Anderson, with an address in Washington, D.C. The registration showed the car was a rental. Mitchell walked back to his cruiser and ran the license through the system. His eyebrows rose as the results came back. The license had expired 3 months ago. This was getting more interesting by the minute. Returning to the Mercedes, Mitchell observed how Anderson's grip on the briefcase had tightened, his knuckles white against the black leather. The businessman's eyes kept moving between Mitchell and his rearview mirror, as if expecting someone else to show up. "Mr. Anderson, are you aware that your license expired 3 months ago?" Anderson's face fell. "Oh God, no. I've been so busy with work, I completely forgot to renew it." His free hand wiped at the sweat on his forehead. "Look, officer, I'm already running late for a very important meeting. Could we possibly handle this quickly?" Mitchell studied the man carefully. The expired license meant he'd have to impound the vehicle, standard procedure. But there was more going on here. The nervous behavior, the government business card he tried to hide, and that briefcase he was clutching like it contained state secrets. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'll need you to step out of the vehicle. Driving with an expired license is a serious offense. I'll have to impound the car." Anderson's face went pale. "Please, officer, you don't understand. I can't. I really need to." "Sir, please step out of the vehicle," Mitchell repeated firmly, his hand moving closer to his weapon. Something big was happening here, and his gut told him this routine traffic stop was about to become anything but routine. As Anderson slowly opened his car door, still gripping the briefcase, Mitchell had no idea that his next decision would change not only his life but the entire Boston Police Department forever. The tow truck's headlights illuminated the scene as Officer Mitchell watched Robert Anderson pace nervously on the sidewalk, still clutching his briefcase. The businessman had refused to let go of it even as he stepped out of the Mercedes. Mitchell noticed how Anderson's eyes kept darting to the surrounding buildings, as if searching for something or someone. "Sir, I'll need to perform a standard vehicle search before impounding," Mitchell announced, following protocol. "Would you please place the briefcase in the car?" Anderson's face twitched. "No, I mean, I prefer to keep my personal belongings with me. Officer, the briefcase contains confidential work documents. Mitchell felt his suspicion growing stronger. In 15 years of police work, he learned that people only got this nervous when they had something serious to hide. Drugs? Stolen money? Whatever it was, that briefcase was the key. Mr. Anderson, for security purposes, I need to search the entire vehicle, including any containers left inside. Mitchell kept his voice professional, but firm. It's standard procedure. You need a warrant for that. Anderson blurted out, hugging the briefcase closer. His expensive suit was now wrinkled, and sweat stained the collar of his white shirt despite the cool evening air. Mitchell's hand moved to his belt, close to his weapon. Sir, are you refusing to comply with a police officer? A moment of tense silence passed between them. The tow truck driver pretended to be busy with his paperwork, clearly wanting no part of the situation. Finally, Anderson's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, he whispered, placing the briefcase on the passenger seat with shaking hands. But please, you don't understand what you're getting into. Mitchell watched as Anderson stepped back, looking like a man walking away from his own execution. The businessman pulled out his phone and started typing frantically. Following procedure, Mitchell began searching the Mercedes. The car was clean, almost too clean, like it had been detailed recently. No receipts, no loose change, not even a single piece of paper in the glove compartment. Just that mysterious briefcase sitting on the passenger seat. Mitchell stared at it through the window. Department policy required probable cause for searching locked containers, and technically, he should get a warrant. But something about this whole situation felt wrong. If he waited for a warrant, whatever was in that briefcase might disappear forever. Making sure Anderson was distracted with his phone, Mitchell opened the car door and reached for the briefcase. His heart pounded as his fingers touched the cool leather. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong, but his instincts were screaming that this was important. The briefcase had a simple combination lock. 3 numbers stood between him and whatever secret Anderson was protecting. Mitchell glanced at Anderson again, still busy with his phone, then looked more closely at the briefcase. There were slight wear marks around certain numbers. Taking a chance, Mitchell tried the most worn digits, 2 to 84. Nothing. 4 to 82. The lock clicked open. His hands were sweating now. This was the point of no return. Opening this briefcase without a warrant could end his career, but he'd come too far to stop now. Mitchell held his breath and opened the briefcase. There were no drugs, no stolen money. Instead, he found himself staring at dozens of photographs, documents, and what looked like official FBI case files. His blood ran cold as he recognized faces in the photos, faces he knew well. There was Captain Roberts, his direct superior, shown meeting with known crime figures. Detective Williams from Narcotics, handling what looked like evidence bags in a parking garage. Even the police commissioner appeared in several surveillance photos. "Oh God," Mitchell whispered, his hands trembling as he lifted a document marked Confidential FBI Internal Investigation. "I wouldn't read that if I were you, Officer Mitchell." Mitchell's head snapped up. Anderson stood there, his phone held up like a weapon, all signs of nervousness gone. His voice was different now, harder, more authoritative. "You just made a very big mistake," Anderson said quietly, "and now you're in this whether you want to be or not." Mitchell's career, his life, everything he knew, it all changed in that single moment, with his hands still gripping the evidence of corruption that went straight to the top of his department. Mitchell stood frozen, the FBI files still in his trembling hands. The night had grown darker, and the street lamps cast long shadows across Anderson's face, making him look more intimidating than the nervous businessman from earlier. "Who are you really?" Mitchell managed to ask, his mouth dry. His mind was racing through the faces he'd just seen in those photos. His captain, his fellow officers, people he trusted for years. Anderson pulled something from his jacket pocket. It wasn't a weapon, but a badge. Special Agent Robert Cooper, FBI. He held it up under the street light. "And you, Officer Mitchell, just compromised a 2-year federal investigation into police corruption." Mitchell felt sick to his stomach. The tow truck driver had left sometime during his illegal search. leaving him alone with a federal agent whose investigation he just interfered with. His career flashed before his eyes. 15 years of service, gone in one moment of curiosity. How many photos did you see? Cooper asked, taking the briefcase from Mitchell's unresisting hands. Enough, Mitchell whispered. Captain Roberts, Williams, even the commissioner. He paused, remembering a detail. The evidence bags Williams was handling. Those were from the Rivera drug bust last month. Cooper's eyebrows rose slightly. What do you know about that case? Something felt wrong about it. The evidence numbers didn't match our records, but when I mentioned it to Williams, he said it was just a clerical error. Mitchell ran his hands through his hair. He was stealing evidence, wasn't he? Among other things. Cooper began organizing the files Mitchell had disturbed. Your department has been compromised for years. Drug money, evidence tampering, tip-offs to criminals. It goes deeper than you can imagine. Mitchell leaned against the Mercedes, his legs weak. All this time, I've been working with. He couldn't finish the sentence. These were people he'd shared meals with, attended their children's birthday parties, trusted with his life. The Rivera case was just the tip of the iceberg. Cooper continued. Your Captain Roberts has been working with the Castellano crime family for at least 5 years. The commissioner makes sure any internal investigations get buried. A memory suddenly hit Mitchell. Last year's internal affairs review, the one that found no evidence of wrongdoing in our department, was a complete sham. Cooper finished. The investigators were paid off. Mitchell's mind raced through countless small moments that had seemed odd, but not quite wrong enough to report. The unexplained meetings, the sudden expensive cars, the cases that disappeared without explanation. Why are you telling me all this? Mitchell asked suddenly. I illegally searched your briefcase. You could have me arrested right now. Cooper smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Because, Officer Mitchell, you're now in a unique position. You've seen the evidence, which means you're either with us or against us. There's no middle ground anymore. Are you offering me a deal? I'm offering you a choice. Cooper closed the briefcase with a sharp click. You can either face charges for interfering with a federal investigation, or you can help us bring down the corruption in your department. Mitchell's throat felt tight. You want me to spy on my own people? They stopped being your people the moment they betrayed their badges. Cooper said sharply. The question is, Officer Mitchell, what kind of cop are you? The kind who looks the other way, or the kind who stands up for what's right? Before Mitchell could answer, Cooper's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. We got company coming. Probably your Captain Roberts. My surveillance team says he's headed this way. Time to make your decision, Officer Mitchell. Mitchell looked down the street, seeing distant headlights approaching. In seconds, you would have to face his captain, knowing what he knew now. Every belief he'd held about his department, his colleagues, his entire career, they'd all been shattered in the space of a few minutes. Cooper held out his phone. What's it going to be, officer? There's no going back after this. The headlights grew brighter, and Mitchell made his choice, one that would change not only his life but the entire Boston Police Department forever. Officer Mitchell sat in his small apartment kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at his untouched coffee. After the encounter with Cooper and his captain earlier that night, sleep seemed impossible. Captain Roberts had arrived at the scene, asking casual questions about the vehicle impound, acting like nothing was wrong. Mitchell had played along, trying to keep his voice steady while knowing his superior was a corrupt cop. The memory of what happened kept replaying in his mind. Roberts had looked at the briefcase in Cooper's hand, his eyes narrowing slightly. But Cooper had played his part perfectly, maintaining his nervous businessman act. They'd let Roberts take the Mercedes to the impound lot, while Cooper had slipped Mitchell a burner phone with instructions to contact him later. Now, that phone sat on his kitchen table like a ticking bomb. Mitchell picked up the old photo frame from his counter, a picture of him graduating from the police academy. His father, a retired officer himself, stood proudly beside him. What would you do, Dad? He whispered to the image. His regular phone buzzed, making him jump. A text from his partner, Sarah Chen. Everything okay? You seemed off after that traffic stop. Mitchell's hands shook as he replied with a simple yeah, just tired. Sarah had been his partner for 3 years. Was she involved too? The thought made him feel sick. He walked to his living room window, watching the quiet street below. The city looked peaceful at night, but now he knew better. Behind those dark windows, corruption was eating away at everything he'd sworn to protect. Opening his laptop, Mitchell began typing names and dates he remembered from the FBI files, creating his own record. Captain Roberts meeting with crime bosses, Williams tampering with evidence, the commissioner's offshore accounts. Each detail felt like a betrayal. The burner phone suddenly vibrated. A message from Cooper. Decision time. Meeting tomorrow, 6 a.m. Franklin Park, near the old fountain. Come alone. Mitchell leaned back in his chair, running his hands over his face. If he agreed to help the FBI, he'd have to lie to everyone he knew. One mistake, one slip of the tongue, and he could end up dead. These people hadn't hesitated to corrupt the entire department. They wouldn't hesitate to silence a threat. But if he refused, Cooper would arrest him for interfering with a federal investigation. His career would be over, and the corruption would continue. His eyes fell on another photo on his desk, the annual police department picnic from last summer. Everyone looked so happy, so normal. Captain Roberts was there, flipping burgers and telling jokes. Williams was playing with his kids. How many of those smiling faces were part of this? Mitchell's stomach churned as he remembered signs he should have noticed earlier. The suspicious meetings in Roberts' office, the cases that disappeared mysteriously, the expensive gifts some officers seemed to afford on a police salary. The worst part was knowing he couldn't trust anyone. Not his captain, not his fellow officers, maybe not even Sarah. 15 years of friendships and trust had turned to dust in a single night. His cat, Max, jumped onto the desk, knocking over a stack of papers. As Mitchell picked them up, he found an old thank you card from Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman whose stolen savings he recovered last year. "You're one of the good ones, Officer Mitchell," she had written. The words hit him hard. Being one of the good ones wasn't just about solving crimes. It was about standing up against corruption, even when it wore a badge. Mitchell picked up the burner phone and typed, "I'll be there." Immediately after sending the message, panic gripped him. There was no going back now. He walked to his safe and pulled out his backup weapon, checking it carefully. From now on, he'd have to watch every word, every action. His colleagues weren't just fellow officers anymore. They were potential threats. As dawn approached, Mitchell sat in his darkened apartment, his mind racing with questions. How deep did the corruption go? Who could he trust? And most importantly, would he survive what was coming? Tomorrow at Franklin Park, he would start his new life as an FBI informant. But tonight, Officer James Mitchell mourned the loss of everything he believed in. The early morning fog hung thick over Franklin Park, making the old fountain look like something from a ghost story. Mitchell arrived 10 minutes early, his hands deep in his jacket pockets, one hand gripping his backup weapon. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. At exactly 6 a.m., 3 figures emerged from the mist. Mitchell recognized Cooper in the middle, but the 2 agents flanking him were new, a tall woman with short red hair and a muscular man who moved like a soldier. "Officer Mitchell," Cooper nodded. "Meet Agents Rivera and Thompson. They're part of our task force." Mitchell studied their faces, wondering how many other undercover agents were watching his department. "How long have you been investigating us?" 2 years, the female agent, Rivera, answered. "But we've suspected corruption in the Boston PD for much longer. Your captain's connection to the Castellano family goes back at least 5 years." Thompson pulled out a tablet. "We need to show you something, Mitchell." He played a video that made Mitchell's blood freeze. It showed Captain Roberts in his office, counting stacks of cash with Williams. The timestamp was from just 3 days ago. "That's $50,000 from the Castellanos," Cooper explained. "Payment for making evidence disappear from their latest drug shipment bust." Mitchell felt sick. "The warehouse raid last week? The one where we supposedly found nothing?" "Exactly." Cooper's face hardened. "There was supposed to be cocaine worth millions there. Your captain made sure the Castellanos got a tip-off before the raid. They cleaned out everything except some empty boxes." "And this is where you come in," Rivera said, stepping closer. "We need someone on the inside who can get us concrete evidence. Someone they trust." Mitchell laughed bitterly. "Trust? After I searched your briefcase without a warrant, Roberts probably suspects something already." "Actually," Thompson smiled, "that worked in our favor. The captain thinks you're someone who's willing to bend rules to get what you want. Someone who might be persuadable. The implication hit Mitchell. You want them to try to recruit me? Cooper nodded. Corrupt cops don't start with major crimes. They test the waters first, offer small favors, easy money. We believe Roberts will approach you soon. And if he doesn't? Mitchell asked. Then we arrest you for interfering with a federal investigation, Rivera stated flatly. But something tells me that won't be necessary. You're not that kind of cop, are you, Mitchell? Mitchell thought about his father's photo at home, about Mrs. Rodriguez's card. No, I'm not. But this is dangerous. If they discover I'm working with you, we'll protect you, Cooper assured him, but you'll need to follow our rules exactly. One mistake could blow everything and get you killed. Thompson handed Mitchell a new phone. This one's better encrypted than the burner. We've installed special apps for secure communication. The icon looks like a weather app. Nobody will suspect anything. Your first task, Rivera continued, is simple observation. Notice who meets with Roberts. When, where. Document everything. Don't take any risks yet. And Sarah? Mitchell asked. My partner. The three agents exchanged looks. We don't know if she's involved, Cooper admitted. Treat everyone as a potential threat until we tell you otherwise. Mitchell felt the weight of the task settling on his shoulders. He would have to lie to everyone he knew, watch his every word, live in constant fear of discovery. One more thing, Cooper added, pulling out a small device. This is a panic button. Press it 3 times quickly if you're in immediate danger. We'll have teams ready to move 24/7. The fog was starting to lift as the sun rose higher. Soon, the park would fill with morning joggers and dog walkers. Their meeting needed to end. Remember, Rivera said as they prepared to leave, you're not alone in this. But from now on, trust no one in your department. Not your partner, not your friends, no one. Mitchell watched them disappear into the remaining fog, the new phone heavy in his pocket. In 2 hours, he would start his shift as usual, put on his uniform, and face his corrupt colleagues. But nothing would ever be usual again. 2 weeks after the park meeting, Mitchell sat in his patrol car watching Captain Roberts' house through his binoculars. It was past midnight, and a black SUV had just pulled into the driveway, the third suspicious vehicle tonight. He quickly snapped photos with the special phone the FBI had given him. Car 27, what's your status? Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. Mitchell lowered the binoculars. Still monitoring the Thompson Street break-in area, he lied, aiding how easily the deception came now. Nothing to report. Copy that. Want some company? I'm nearby. Negative, he replied quickly, too quickly. I mean, I'm about to call it a night anyway. There was a pause. You okay, James? You've been different lately. Before he could respond, the black SUV's door opened. Mitchell's heart jumped as he recognized Marco Castellano, the drug family's second in command, stepping out. Captain Roberts met him at the door, shaking hands like old friends. I'm fine, Sarah, he said into the radio. Just tired. See you tomorrow. As soon as Sarah signed off, Mitchell pressed the FBI app's record button. Through his phone's enhanced lens, he captured Roberts accepting what looked like a thick envelope from Castellano. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from anger. Every piece of evidence he collected showed him just how deep the corruption went. Suddenly, his regular phone buzzed. A text from Roberts. Stop by my office tomorrow morning. Need to discuss something. Mitchell's mouth went dry. Cooper had predicted this, the captain making his move. After 2 weeks of watching Mitchell, they must have decided he was ready for recruitment. The next morning, Mitchell entered the police station earlier than usual. He'd spent half the night practicing his responses, preparing for every possible scenario. The FBI's instructions echoed in his head. Appear interested but not eager. Let them make the first move. Robert's office door was open. Come in, Mitchell. Close the door behind you. The captain looked relaxed, reading a case file. You've been putting in a lot of extra hours lately. Just trying to do my job, sir. Roberts smiled. That's what I like about you, Mitchell. Dedicated. Smart. He closed the file. Smart enough to know when something's worth investigating. Like that briefcase the other week. Mitchell kept his face neutral, though his heart was racing. Just following my instincts, sir. Instincts are good, Roberts nodded. So is knowing when to act on them, and when to look the other way. He pulled out an envelope. Your father's medical bills must be pretty heavy. Mitchell stared at the envelope. His father's cancer treatment was draining his savings, but how did Roberts know that? The department takes care of its own, Roberts continued. All you have to do is be a team player. What kind of team are we talking about, sir? Robert's smile widened. Smart question. Let's start small. Next week, there's a drug raid planned on Dover Street. All you need to do is call in sick that day. Mitchell felt sick for real, and in return. The captain pushed the envelope across the desk. Consider it a signing bonus. 5,000. Plenty more where that came from. Mitchell picked up the envelope, careful to hold it by the edges. The FBI would want it for fingerprints. This is generous, sir. Sleep on it, Roberts said. But remember, this conversation never happened. And Mitchell? His voice hardened. Choose your next moves very carefully. Outside the office, Mitchell headed straight for the bathroom. He needed to contact Cooper immediately. But as he reached for the FBI phone, the bathroom door opened. Sarah walked in, her face serious. We need to talk, James. Mitchell froze. Had she followed him? Did she know? The captain isn't the only one who's been watching you, she said quietly. In that moment, Mitchell realized he'd made a terrible mistake. He'd been so focused on Roberts. He'd forgotten about everyone else. Now he was trapped in the bathroom with his partner, the envelope in his pocket, and no way to call for help. Sarah moved between him and the door. So, partner, want to tell me what's really going on? Mitchell's hand moved slowly toward his weapon as he faced Sarah in the bathroom. His mind raced through options, none of them good. If she was working with Roberts, he was already dead. If she wasn't, he might be about to make a terrible mistake. Your hands are shaking, Sarah observed quietly. They never shake on the job, not even during the Morgan Street shootout last year. Sarah, whatever you think you know. I know you've been lying about your locations, she cut him off. I know you've been watching Robert's house, and I know you just took money from him. She paused. The question is, are you dirty, or are you working with someone else? Before Mitchell could answer, 3 sharp knocks hit the bathroom door. Officer Chen. Captain wants to see you. It was William's voice. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. It was the moment of truth. Would she turn him in? Tell them I'll be right there, she called out, not breaking eye contact with Mitchell. Then, in a whisper, Storage room B, 10 minutes. Come alone, or I go straight to Roberts. She left, leaving Mitchell leaning against the sink, his heart pounding. He pulled out the FBI phone, but there was no signal. The bathroom's thick walls blocked everything. He'd have to make this decision on his own. 10 minutes later, Mitchell approached Storage Room B, his backup weapon ready under his jacket. The hallway was empty, too empty. Every instinct screamed trap, but he had no choice. He opened the door slowly. Sarah stood alone in the dim room, between boxes of old files. Close it, she said. As the door clicked shut, Sarah spoke first. 2 years ago, Internal Affairs approached me about corruption in the department. I've been gathering evidence ever since. Mitchell felt dizzy with relief, but caution kept his guard up. Prove it. She pulled out her phone, showing him photos. Robert's meeting with criminals, Williams handling drug shipments, everything matching what he'd seen in Cooper's files. Aya doesn't know about the FBI investigation, she said. And the FBI doesn't know about me. We've all been watching the same people, not knowing about each other. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. They both froze. Storage rooms. Check them all, Robert's voice commanded. Sarah moved fast, shoving Mitchell behind a tall filing cabinet. The door burst open seconds later. Chen, what are you doing here? Roberts asked. Organizing old case files, sir, she replied calmly. Williams said you wanted them reviewed. Mitchell held his breath. One wrong move, one suspicious glance from Sarah, and it would all be over. Seen Mitchell? Roberts asked. Not since this morning, Sarah lied smoothly. Is something wrong? The money I gave him had a tracker, Roberts said. Signals coming from somewhere in the building. If he's working with someone... Want me to help look for him? Sarah offered. No, stay here. Make sure he doesn't try to use this room as an escape route. The door closed, footsteps moving away. Sarah waited 30 seconds before whispering, the envelope. Get rid of it. Mitchell pulled it out. Sarah quickly stuffed it into an old evidence box, marking it for shredding. They're going to kill us both, Mitchell realized. They know I'm working with someone. They'll assume it's you. Then we need to move now, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling IA. You call your FBI contacts. No more working separately. It's too dangerous. Mitchell grabbed her arm. Wait. The tracker and the money. Roberts will know we're in here together. Realization hit them both as heavy footsteps approached again. Multiple sets this time. Back door, Sarah whispered, pointing to the maintenance exit. It leads to the parking lot. They'll be watching it. Mitchell pulled out both his phones. How good are you at running? Better be good enough, she replied, drawing her weapon. The footsteps stopped outside. Door handles along the hallway rattled as Robert's men checked each room. Mitchell's fingers moved quickly over the FBI phone, sending their location and one word. Column. Sarah gripped her weapon tighter. Ready? The storage room door handle began to turn. In seconds, their covers would be blown, and their lives would depend on whether backup arrived in time. Mitchell thought of his father's photo, of Mrs. Rodriguez's card, of everything he was fighting for. Ready. The storage room door crashed open as Mitchell and Sarah dove behind different filing cabinets. Gunshots exploded through the room, sending paper and splinters flying everywhere. Mitchell, Robert's voice boomed. You disappoint me. You could have been rich. Mitchell checked his FBI phone. No response yet. They needed to buy time. Was that your plan with my father's medical bills, Captain? Make me desperate enough to join you. More shots hit the cabinet protecting him. Through the chaos, he caught Sarah's eye across the room. She pointed to the maintenance exit, then held up 3 fingers. A countdown. You're just like your father, Robert spat. Too righteous for your own good. At least he died believing in your honor. Mitchell's blood ran cold. What did you say about my father? Roberts laughed. Cancer? Please. Who you think arranged for his treatment to fail? 2 fingers from Sarah now. Mitchell's hands shook with rage, but he forced himself to focus. They had one chance. Williams, Roberts commanded, check the back exit. Chen, if you're still alive in there, last chance to pick the right side. Go to hell, Captain, Sarah shouted, then nodded to Mitchell, 1 finger. The maintenance door burst open, but it wasn't Williams coming in. It was Agent Cooper and his team, weapons drawn. At the same moment, Internal Affairs officers stormed through the main door. FBI, drop your weapons. Internal Affairs, everyone freeze. The storage room erupted into chaos. Roberts tried to shoot his way out, but Sarah tackled him from behind. Mitchell disarmed Williams, who gave up without a fight. The rest of Roberts' corrupt officers, caught between federal agents and EA, surrendered. You okay? Cooper asked, helping Mitchell up. My father, Mitchell gasped. Roberts said, they killed him. Cooper nodded grimly. We know. Found the evidence in his offshore accounts last week. Was waiting for the right time to tell you. Sarah approached, handcuffing Roberts. All those years, watching my fellow officers turn dirty. Never thought it went this high up. The commissioner? Mitchell asked. Arrested 10 minutes ago, Cooper confirmed. Along with 3 judges and half the narcotics division. Your signal triggered everything. Roberts glared at them as he was led away. You have no idea what you've done. The Castellanos will never let this stand. The Castellanos have bigger problems, a new voice announced. Agent Rivera walked in, smiling. Their entire operation was raided this morning. Seems someone gave us all their locations. Marco Castellano talked, Cooper explained. Turns out he didn't appreciate Roberts putting a tracker on him too. Gave up everything to save himself. Over the next few hours, the station transformed into a crime scene. FBI agents and IA officers collected evidence, arrested corrupt officers, and conducted interviews. The press gathered outside, sensing a major story. Mitchell sat at his desk, staring at his father's photo. Sarah brought him coffee. Internal Affairs wants to promote me, she said. Head of the new anti-corruption task force. You deserve it, Mitchell replied. All those years, working alone. Not alone anymore, she smiled. They want you as my partner, if you're interested. Cooper approached them. Actually, the FBI has an offer too. We're creating a special division to investigate police corruption nationwide. After what you two did here. Mitchell looked at his father's photo one last time, then at Sarah. She nodded slightly. Thank you, he told Cooper, but I think we'll stay here. Boston PD needs good cops now more than ever. 1 month later, Mitchell stood in the cemetery, placing flowers on his father's grave. The department had been cleaned out, with honest officers promoted to fill the vacant positions. The Castellano crime family was finished. His father's killers were facing justice. Sarah walked up beside him. New case just came in. Possible corruption in the Providence PD. Want to check it out? Mitchell smiled. Dad always said one honest cop can make a difference. Good thing there's two of us then, Sarah replied. Together, they walked back to their car, ready to continue the fight. The system wasn't perfect, but as long as there were officers willing to stand up for what's right, there was hope. The sun set over Boston, a city a little cleaner, a little safer, thanks to one officer's choice to open a briefcase and face the truth inside.